allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, let me go through a few housekeeping. Welcome to the zoning board. The fire exits is located to your left of this room. In the event of a fire, you will be notified by an announcement. If notified, please move in a calm and orderly fashion to the exit. Do not use the elevators. Use either the front or back staircases. The meeting is recorded by Secretary Michelle for purposes of a record and minutes, so please identify yourself each time you come to the podium and speak into the microphone. The board will follow the items in the order they appear on the agenda. Extra copies are near the door, should be near the door. After the case has been called, the applicant or a representative of the applicant shall come to the podium and identify him or herself, state their address, and present their case. The zoning board members will then have an opportunity to question the applicant. Then the case will be open to the public for public input. Anyone wishing to speak to the board regarding the application will come to the podium and identify themselves along with their address and direct their questions to the board. Once the public input has been completed, the applicant or representative will be given the opportunity to respond. And then I will close the public hearing and continue to the next case. After all the cases have been heard, the board will take a short recess and then return to deliberate each case in the order the applicant is still present. No further input is allowed at this point, but you may stay and listen to the deliberation. If you wish to leave, you can find out the results by calling the Planning and Zoning Department tomorrow after 9 a.m. That being said, I think we can go ahead, right?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First item on the agenda is case number ZB 1705-1. Upon the matter of request by ID Sign Systems, acting as agent for Rochester Regional Health, for area variances to install an additional freestanding sign exceeding maximum permitted signage per lot and with less than required front setback on premises 1285 Eastridge Road in an M manufacturing district.
Good evening. How are you? My name is Phil Dotson. I'm with ID Sign Systems in Rochester, New York at 410 Atlantic Ave. I'm here on behalf of Rochester Regional Health seeking an additional, a variance for an additional post and panel sign.
Before you start,
Yes,
I'm
sir.
going to interrupt you. Raise your right hand. Say that you will tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I will.
Very good. Continue.
All right. So the situation with the parcel that we're dealing with, there's two entrances. There's an entrance off of Ridge Road, and then there's an entrance to the property off of Portland Ave. So we're requesting an additional ground sign to help further identify the entrance off of Portland Ave to the property. Being the one that kind of on that intersection of Ridge and Portland, if you miss it going down Ridge, you can come around to Portland, but if you miss it there, then you got to go up to the hospital to make a U-turn, and that's kind of a pain in the neck to spin around and try to get back into the property. The sign itself that we're requesting is non-lit, just a regular post and panel aluminum sign. It would be placed within the grass island on Portland Ave. There's a grass island between the road and the parking lot. So therefore, the second variance is to fall within the setback of 15 feet. It would end up being about 6.5 feet from the edge of the sidewalk to the front of the sign in that area.
So the two variances is one number of freestanding signs. There's two, because there's actually two different lots. So that's the one variance, and then the second variance is the setback. Now, do both signs need that setback variance?
No, just the one on Portland Ave needs
Just the one on Portland Ave, the other one does not, right?
Correct, yeah. It would actually take place of where the old Everest Institute sign was.
On
On
Ridge Road?
Yeah, that one on Ridge would be fine. It's the one on Portland that needs the
Okay.
setback.
So how about, in looking at this the other day, to my surprise, I never realized that parking lot went through to the backside of Everest.
Yeah, I didn't either.
Yeah, I thought there was only one entrance, and I never realized there was a driveway in there, or a whole parking lot there, actually. Is there any questions from the board members?
This has nothing to do with the old Tops building. This is totally different. It used to be like a Home Depot type of place at one time, and it was an Everett Institute.
Mhm.
So they're all gone now, right?
Correct, yep.
And it's going to be used by Regional Health.
Yep.
And that's, if I see it right, it's something to do with education?
Correct, yeah. It's their learning center.
Yeah.
So what they have in there, they have different, they have a program that's affiliated with the schools, nursing training programs within the building, and they're continuing to add educational and training programs within the space. So that's
I
what
can
they're,
see why you need two signs.
yeah,
If you just put one on Portland, Ridge Road's not going to find it.
right, no,
So
you,
I know you need the two sides. Okay, just wanted to make sure I got the right business.
The other difficulty I noticed is in the event you put it, if you were to adhere to code on the Portland, you'd have to put the sign in the parking lot,
correct, yeah.
the way it was designed. And there was never a sign up there that you know of before.
Not that I know of, no.
Okay.
The only thing that I saw was just, I think at the Rite Aid on the corner, they have a little, or what was Rite Aid on the corner, has a little entrance sign on their driveway that's pretty close to
I
the
would
sidewalk.
imagine, and I don't remember, there used to be a, not a Home Depot, but a
Heckinger?
Heckinger or somebody like that over there. And I thought they had entrance signs, but I don't know if they had a sign out. But I do know, I'm pretty sure they had entrance and exit signs, but that was a while ago. Any other questions from the board? Thank you, and I'll just call for anybody wishing to speak in favor of this application, please step up. Anybody wishing to speak against this application, come on up. Anybody have a question about the application, come on up. Seeing none, we'll close this hearing. Okay. Very good, thank you. Yep.
Next case on the agenda is case number ZB 1705-2. Upon the matter of request by Jason Bono for area variances to install front yard fencing exceeding maximum allowable height and linear footage on premises 63 Dakeland Road in an R2 residential district.
Hi, how are you guys?
Good, how are you?
Good. My name is Jason Bono, 63 Dakeland Road. It's my wife, Kate.
I'm Kate Bono.
Okay, please, right hand. You swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Go ahead, continue.
So we would like to put up a 4-foot fence, probably a picket fence, that goes in between our house and our garage where we have a little patio. The full footage of the fence would be about 40 feet. Our reason for doing this is we have a greyhound. He's about hip high, so he's a bit tall. And the Greyhound Association of Greater Rochester recommends that the minimum height of any fence for this breed be 4 feet.
Okay. Is there any other area that you can keep the dog? I mean, I kind of noticed the backyard's not conducive to,
The backyard is a large hill with a stream at the bottom, and that's, being a corner property, that's also kind of where everyone would be able to see the fence.
okay. I believe in our notes, and I gotta take a quick look through it, there was someone that was concerned about the fence. They didn't sign their name to it. They weren't keen on a front yard fence exceeding the height or the length. But more than that, they were concerned with the look of the fence because they weren't sure if you were going to put a military-style fence, stockade fence, a metal mesh fence, and they're concerned about that. Now, in your application, I see you have a picture of the fence, and it is a Gothic picket fence.
Yes, just a wood picket fence we want.
And the town allows a 3.5-foot height, but it seems more and more that front yard fences are going to 4 feet because that's the way they sell them.
Not only that, but our dog could unfortunately jump a 3.5-foot fence, so.
Okay. Any questions from the board members?
Just, I have one. You're going to purchase this fence, or is it going to be hand-built?
Purchased.
I was over there today, and I have to admit, I'd never been back there before, so it was a learning experience. And I noticed when you said the backyard is a hill,
Yes,
you really don't have a whole lot of flat land,
there's no flat land in the backyard.
so you don't have a lot of choices here. at all,
Yeah,
Unless you do a humongous landfill,
yeah.
but that's not practical. I think the chairman said is this board has talked about 3.5 feet being too short.
Yes.
The code should be changed to 4 because I guess nobody makes a 3.5-foot fence.
We noticed that also when we were
Yeah,
looking
so-
around. It's not something on the market.
Personally, I have no objection to the 4-foot fence at all. Besides the fact that the dog is a little bit big, but 4 foot makes so much more sense.
Yes,
The style you picked, I think will look nice there.
thank you.
So I think the person that wrote the letter can rest
I think they can as well.
because they don't have to worry about that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Are you going to paint the fence or stain it or anything? Or?
We haven't really talked that through. What do you?
Probably not.
I was thinking of growing some vines on it, flower vines and
Cover it a
and
little.
such. Yeah.
Any of your neighbors show any concern to you?
No, our next door neighbor said he was glad we'd have a spot where our dog could hang out outside because he cries when he's inside and we're outside, that kind of thing. A few neighbors asked questions, but when we answered them, they didn't seem concerned.
Okay. Any other questions from the board? Seeing none, is there anybody who would like to speak in favor of this application? Please step forward.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody that would like to speak against this application, please step forward. Anybody having a question about fences, please step forward. Okay, seeing none, we can close that one and move on to the next.
Next case on the agenda is case number ZB 1705-3. Upon the matter of request by Jacqueline Schild for an area variance to install a rear deck with less than required rear setback on premises 7 Glen Cove Rise in an R5 residential district.
Hi, I'm Jackie Shield. I live at 7 Glen Cove, and this is Thomas Wells. We live there together.
I swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Thank you.
So our proposal is to build a 8x10 deck in the back of our home. It's a townhome in Harbor Hill off Thomas Avenue. We had to apply for a variance because we're close to that 10-foot depth behind the neighbors behind us. But we've staked out the deck. We're not in anybody's property line. It doesn't interfere with anything else in the neighborhood. And we have approval from the board, so just want to see if we can build an 8x10 deck.
Just to clear, it's a rear setback requirement. Code requires 10 feet. You're requesting 6 to 9 feet, and that's because it's on an angle. The lot angles, or the building
Right.
angles or lot angles. One of them's got an angle, but,
Yeah, it's
so
all lines out.
your variance is gonna be anywhere from 1 foot to 4 foot, right?
Right.
Have you spoke with any of the neighbors or the people it's gonna directly affect, anybody adverse to it?
No.
No, we staked it out so people could actually kind of get a visual what it would look like. And we had some members from the board come over and take a look at it and talk to some of our neighbors at the HOA meeting, and nobody expressed a concern, so we're all back there.
Okay. Any questions from any of the board members? Anybody? Okay, seeing none, this is going too fast. Seeing none, thank you. Is there anybody that would like to speak in favor of this application? Please step up.
We're all set.
You're all set, thank you. And is there anybody, please step up.
Hi, my name is C.P. Maloney. I live at 17 Glen Cove Rise in Rochester. I'm speaking as a private citizen right now, not as the president of the association. And I'll raise my right hand.
You don't have,
Oh, good.
nope. just-
Yes, I support this application. I was one of the people who was on the board who went down there and measured. We did tell Jackie and informed her that she was going to have to come to the town to make sure that she did have a variance. And that's one of the things in our association, that every person has to have the town approve any variances or whatever. It has to have a town approval. So she has asked us to, make sure that all the lines are crossed and dotted, Ts, et cetera. At this point, I have no objection to this request going through.
Very good.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Anything else?
Anyone else like to speak in favor of the application? Is there anybody, seeing none, is there anybody that'd like to speak against the application? Is there anybody that just step up, sir?
Not really speaking against it.
Right up to-
I just wanna make
sir,
you aware.
Right up to the mic and state your name, please, and your address.
Stephen Johns, 240 Harbor Hill Drive. I live directly behind you. I just want you to know that there's a drainage problem in that back lot, okay? And the builder, when they did the grading, they didn't allow for runoff or didn't do a decent enough job that the water would run off away from the houses. It builds up towards the houses. And I'm just concerned now if they start putting a porch here, what's that going to do? Now I'm going to have more runoff coming towards my house because I already have a problem with water coming into my basement there.
Well, if I'm pretty sure this is an open deck, if I'm correct.
Yeah, well, I just want to be careful. Hey, don't pile up dirt there because I don't want the water
Sir,
running into
sir,
my backyard.
Talk to us.
I don't really want that water
Okay.
running towards my house and
Okay.
then going into the basement because I've already done work already to try and alleviate the problem.
Well, they still will have to meet the town building codes. So
Okay.
the town will supervise their, they have to approve their plans and supervise it. So, I'm sure they'll do it correctly so that it's not adding to your.
Yeah, I'm not trying to be a complainer here. I just want them to know, hey, be careful about it because there is a problem. I'm sure if you go out there right now, you'll see the standing water in that backyard. I mean, there's not a lot of room back there,
Right.
okay?
Very good.
Just
Thank
want
you.
to know. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Anybody else like to speak against the application? Anybody have a question about the application? Seeing none, we'll close this one and move on to the next one.
Mr. President, there's a letter in the packet, the last page, with the concern about emergency access.
Okay.
Jane Lavering.
Oh, and in this packet?
Yeah.
Okay, excuse me, I didn't catch that.
From the concern raised, this may be something that we may want to defer to fire safety to make sure that the code is properly enforced.
So if the issue is that there's potentially an easement or other fire access restriction, that shouldn't affect the variance determination, but that's something that the building inspector will look into before they issue a building permit. They make sure that all fire safety code issues are addressed.
This is from a neighbor, Jane Laverie. And she does mention she's concerned with the setback and the,
So the building permit takes precedence over the variance.
As far as a fire safety issue, yes. So the variance just takes into consideration the factors that you all review in determining whether or not it's an appropriate use of the land. And then the building inspector is charged with making sure that all state building and fire code regulations and requirements are met. So you wouldn't have to worry yourself about things like that. Just the same as with the construction of the actual deck, you wouldn't have to get involved with how that's going to be handled. That would all be the building department.
okay?
I have a concern. I wasn't going to bring it up, but I know these townhouses over there pretty well, and this looks like a pretty good plan, it's going to be a nice addition to the structure. And I'm wondering if a lot of other people might say, oh, we should do that with ours. Can you foresee a very popular demand for these?
I think there are some already, aren't there? Right, I think there's quite a few of them.
I don't think,
Building with original design. It was built with original design, correct? From what I read.
I'd like to have this gentleman come back up if I can.
Yeah.
Yep.
I just wanted to make sure the board was aware that did the question get answered in terms of there is no filed easement that the town could find record of? So the only easement that was associated with this subdivision approval back in, when it was first approved, were, there are some easements for access for utilities for the purposes to the town. And not even in this area where this particular section of units is cited. So to our knowledge, we couldn't find any record of any easements that were filed as part of the subdivision. And we did review this internally with staff. Fire marshal wasn't aware of any regulation that was not being met by the current design or any need for any kind of access based on location of, fire hydrants and truck equipment. The development meets all current standards for access for fire equipment.
Again, my name is C.P. Maloney, 17 Glen Cove Rise. At this time, all of the townhouses at Harbor Hill, other than this one that we have an application for and one other one, do have decks attached to them. So this would be, as far as I know, there's only one or two decks that will be applied for, and they will have to go through the permitting process, building variances, etc., to meet the approval of the board. But this would only be like the second one I think that we have, and then we'll have one more at the most that could put up. And that would probably be in an area where Carrie is talking about, where there would be an impingement upon RG&E's right-of-way or whatever. They would have to have that taken care of at the time they put in the permit. Anything else, sir?
No, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Anybody else want to make any comments before I close this? I did close it. Okay, thank you. It's closed. And we'll move on to the next one.
Next item on the agenda is case number ZB 1705-4. Upon the matter of request by Land Tech Surveying and Planning, acting as agent for Jeffrey Riesenberger for a use variance to continue operating a lawn and landscape business on premises 258 St. Joseph Street in an RR rural residential district.
Hi, John.
I know. Good evening.
You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Are we gonna swear in your client too?
Sure.
Again, truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. And you must be Jeff?
Yes, I am.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name's John Sharaba with Land Tech, representing Jeff this evening. Jeff is here, can answer any questions that I cannot, but we're hoping that you'll understand where we are, where we came from, and about this project. So Jeff is a longtime businessman in town of Arundecoit, very well respected for his business activities and everything he does for our town. But tonight we're specifically talking about 258 St. Joseph Street. This parcel is 5 acres in size, located on the east side of St. Joseph Street, about 1,000 feet north of Seneca Avenue. And the site, if you've been out there, is well screened. Jeff uses this, it's well screened and residential in nature from Seneca Road. We also have on the south line a 6-foot vinyl fence that runs along the south property line. In the rear of this parcel, it's well treed. There's an existing hedgerow. On the north property line, there's an existing business, a collision shop that's his north adjacent neighbor. The site contains several outbuildings. These buildings have adequate permits and gained approvals in the past for the operation of Jeff's landscaping business. Those buildings are used to house the majority of his equipment. All are per code. He also has outside storage of vehicles allowed by past variances. The site also has bulk storage, mulch, sand, so topsoil and other landscaping-related materials, which he has received an area variance for back in 2000. What's also unique about this site, in the operation of Jeff's business, it also has gardens and a nursery. So it acts like the agricultural area that the flats is. So if you look at Jeff's business, and he's one of several businesses in the flats, he's the most well-suited to the original intent or how the flats used to operate. Also, Jeff's business has relatively remained unchanged. He had dramatic growth in the early 90s. That's why he needed to move to the flats. But since around 2013 or so, the business has been very steady. He supplies a lot of jobs for part-time jobs for kids and things like that, seasonal work. Also important to point out that the operation of the business is seasonal, operating from mid-April through December. So only about 8.5 months of the year, Jeff's business is really active, but it's a quiet business, typical to agricultural development. There's trees growing, there is some maintenance of equipment and things such as that, but nothing that is out of the ordinary for the operation of his business. In order for Jeff to operate his business back in 1997, I don't know if anybody from the board was on back then, that's when Jeff received his first use variance to operate the business there, and has operated within the limits of that variance since the inception. Back in 2000, as I mentioned, Jeff also received an area variance for the operation of outdoor activities such as the mulch and things, bulk storage that I described before. And we have not heard of any complaints or anything to the operation of his business to that end. That being said, we believe that Jeff's business is in the character of the neighborhood. It has no negative physical impact to the neighborhood. And what we're here requesting for is an extension of the use variance. It's not self-created. He came to this board back in 1997 and got a variance, came back again in 2002 for the update of that variance, and operated in good faith during that whole time. So we're not asking for any change of use, just trying to adhere to the code to keep current with the area variance. What we formally request tonight, though, is to ask for the variance in perpetuity. I think, in my professional opinion, I've never seen a use variance with a sunset clause. What we'd like to see is to operate this as intended. The negative impacts of Mr. Riesenberger moving his business are numerous. Trying to find a 5-acre parcel in a Runnequoit commercial, if you could find one, would be very challenging, and the other thing would be very costly. Some of the numbers I came up with are a couple $100,000 just to secure the land. But we're asking you to request this variance to go on with the land in perpetuity, and that if there's any special requirement that you have upon Mr. Riesenberger, we'd like a special permit for that, and regulate that under a special permit, not a use variance.
You're gonna have to help me on this. Realizing that there was a use permit granted in 97, you called it, and it calls it in here, a sunset clause. Is that,
Maybe Ashley can help speak to that, but they basically gave a term. So he
is
bought
that
the property.
common to do?
No.
Okay, all right. Because I always thought when you gave a use variance, it stayed with the land,
Right.
even continuing after ownership, right?
Yeah, particularly continuing after ownership, it would, there would be, how can I put this, a question as to the appropriateness of a use variance that did not continue in perpetuity beyond the present owner. So I would echo John's comment that it's definitely more common, if not what's most legally appropriate, to have any use variance that's granted to be in perpetuity. And just following up on that, as far as review of a current approval that is seeking to be extended, note that the type of review that the board would undergo is not a fresh look. It's a different standard wherein if there haven't been any substantial changes that would negatively impact the rationale for granting the initial approval, then typically an extension would be deemed to be appropriate in those situations. But I agree with John's position that if the use variance were to be extended, that it would be most appropriate to not have an expiration or a sunset provision on that.
And what would be a good reason that they put this sunset clause in way back when?
I'm not sure. I don't know if we have a copy, if there's any rationale in the copy of the actual approval.
Unfortunately, there wasn't any guidance in the past documentation about why the time limit was put in. I've never seen it or heard. I don't know if Ashley can speak to that as well. You're essentially, with granting a use variance, you're allowing somebody to utilize the land for a specific purpose that wouldn't otherwise be allowed under code, and make improvements under that type of use or that intensity of use. And so to let somebody do that for some finite period of time seems ill-advised. And so we're not sure why in the past that would have been the approach. And it may have been a confusion in terms of realizing that a use variance is one thing and it wasn't a special use permit type of situation. But there wasn't really anything in the record to indicate why that was done.
Okay.
Because this fits the use, the principal, temporary use definition more than it does the variance. So it could just been misreading what the intent was.
Yeah, possibly.
All right, that question was kind of answered, so we'll
Yeah. I think the fact that Ashley wasn't here was probably why it happened.
Right.
What's that?
Right.
And we weren't here back in 97, so I don't know what they were thinking. Any questions from the board?
Yeah, the denial of this use would be a death blow to the business,
We agree.
I assume.
Yes.
And like you said, Jeff, there's not a lot of 5-acre parcels around Arundecoit that are available for almost any price. And you've been there 20 years now.
Over 20 years.
Over 20 years. So that would be kind of a negative thing on this town. If you had a variance and you got messed up after 20 years, I know I wouldn't want to come here for a variance if that was the case. So I think that's, and the track record, as I understand it, is excellent. There's been no complaints, and there's been a lot of consideration for the other people down the flats. So just so to make sure the neighborhood doesn't change. Who put the fence up?
We put the fence up.
Who put the fence up?
Yes.
Under pressure?
To be a good neighbor.
That's the kind of pressure that goes a long way, I think.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Now, looking through the packet, you got a handful of fans here, and this Dr. Ken Kilminster asked me to read a letter, and I'm not going to read the whole letter, I'm just going to read the last paragraph. Jeff and his company are absolutely devoted to the welfare and the community of Arundequoit. It would be comforting to know that his base of operation remains in the flats as it has for many years. I see no reason at all why this would have to change. And that's, he lives at 213 Van Voris. There's another letter from Leslie DeCesar, and I'm just going to read the last of it. As an Arundequoit resident for 20 years, I feel it imperative that the zoning board to provide him with all the support he needs so that he can continue to be an asset in our town. Arundequoit Community Cup Board, also very much in favor. And a letter from the Helping Arundequoit Plan for Progress, the HIP group. Ann Burns also speaks highly. And I think there's one more. And I didn't read this one here. She also speaks highly. Gail Fox. Says the same thing. And then there's one more. Alice Amanda from Thomas Avenue. She speaks in favor. Any other questions from the board? Okay, thank you, gentlemen. Is there anybody that would like to speak in favor of this application? Step up one at a time, please, in an orderly fashion. State your name and go ahead.
Good evening, Board. Mike Nolan, 350 Kings Highway North. Here to speak in favor of this application tonight. Jeff Friesenberger is a fixture in Arundequoit. His business is an example for a lot of small businesses to emulate. The way he handles himself, not only is his business beautifying our town and making our areas prettier, and but just his employment and his technique. He employs young people. You know, sometimes young people that might need a little extra guidance, mentors them, provides guidance and leadership, and just truly a really good example of an Arundequoit business. As a resident of Arundequoit, his kids are here, his family, and can't speak highly enough. I think you could probably read a lot of that into the letters, but certainly from one small business person to another, Jeff belongs here in Arundequoit. He is a part of Arundequoit. He's part of what makes us great, and I look forward to seeing him continue that operation. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Rich Orzik, 2017 Hudson Avenue and 103 Eastman Estates. Jeff and I have been friends for about 20 years, and more recently he has asked me to look for properties for him. He was looking to expand maybe a little more of a retail end of his business, and we actually wrote an offer on a property this past year and didn't get it. Mr. Nolan ended up purchasing the property. So we've been looking for something of that size, and it's just not available in the town of Arundequoit. The Flats area is a unique rural sort of area, and obviously we know that the town itself is about 98% built, and there just aren't any other areas that we can find to move that business. In addition to that, I'm also president of the Chamber of Commerce, and it's very important that we support successful small businesses in our community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name's Curtis Gilbert. I'm a neighbor of the businesses up Van Voorst at the end, so I'm only like 5 doors up the hill from Jeff's business. And I just want to support his business because both Jeff and the business are models for the town. And that's all I really, both my kids worked there when they were, teenagers in high school, and it'd be a shame to do anything that would jeopardize his ability to do business there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Jim Williams. I live at 730 Rock Beach Road. I've known Jeff and his family for over 40 years. 2 of my sons worked for him. They've become successful business people today, and I think a lot of it has to do with Jeff's tutoring. I think we'd all like to have a neighbor like Jeff. He takes great pride in his work, great pride in his company, and his equipment, and people have always been terrific. So I support the variance. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Jeff Printy. I'm the pastor of Vineyard Church at 2150 Portland Avenue. We're one of the many beneficiaries of Jeff's altruism. We host the Arundecoit Community Cupboard on our land. We grow over 1,000 pounds of produce every summer for the community cupboard itself, and Jeff has for the last 7 years provided us with all the soil we need for our raised beds. He's provided all the mulch that we need between the beds. He has also gone above and beyond and helped us create a path from the Heritage Christian Services home at 2210, and that path runs about 100 yards to our property so that the residents from there can be wheeled over to our services on Sunday morning. So Jeff is obviously a respected and honorable businessman, but a tremendous asset to our community. So thank you.
Thank you.
Adam Sinisu, 398 Mount Airy. I'd also like to speak to Jeff's altruism. My daughter Avery's, we live in Arundecoit. My daughter Avery has been dealing with very serious life-threatening disease for the past 7 years. About 4 years ago, she had a bone marrow transplant, and Jeff, who we hardly knew at the time, surprised them with a playground for when she got home. A wooden playground. We have a lot of woods. He cleared the area. He and his team put together a playground. And in addition to that, for the past 3-4 years, Jeff has landscaped our yard, both back and front, free of charge. So I just wanted to include that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Tony Mascaro. I live at 707 Van Voorst Avenue. I'd like to speak on behalf of Jeff Riesenberger. I've known him now for a little over 20 years, and as has been said many times here tonight, Jeff is one of the best people the town of Arundecoit ever had. He gives back to this community 100-fold. Both of my kids have worked for Jeff. Jeff has maintained my property on Van Voorst Avenue for as long as I've been there. There's no better small business owner in this town than Jeff Riesenberger. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Michael Schmock. I live at 200 St. Joseph Street. I've been there since 1997 also, so I just kind of wanted to let you guys know a little bit about the care that Jeff takes in the community and what he does. He starts late every day. He burns a lot of time in the summer and daylight by not working early. He likes to make sure that all the walkers are at school, all the buses are done, all the people are up and gone to work before he starts rolling his trucks out. He doesn't roll his trucks back and forth all day long either. He leaves and generally just comes back. And he usually comes down Seneca Park Avenue and across my house on the way there, so I see him every day he comes, and it's not a bother whatsoever. It's not like he's doing it 400 times a day. All his equipment is in good working condition and nice. He's not driving crap around town. His shop and his place that he uses is just as meticulous as his vehicles and everything else are. You can't tell there's an Arundecoit landscaping business there unless you know it's there. We have a ton of walkers, joggers, bikers, and people that just drive down the street looking at the wildlife and the deer down by where we live. And I guarantee you nobody knows that's there, unless, of course, they know it's there. When he first bought the place, he planted a whole bunch of little trees out there, and I didn't understand why, because they were like right in the middle. Now I know why, because it hides his place 20 years later now that they're all grown. You can't really see it. All his people that work for him obey the speed limit. I don't see cars racing by. I don't see cars horse playing. Everybody that seems to work for him does a nice job. Like everybody said already, he hires Arundecoit kids. He doesn't hire Penfield kids, Webster kids, Grease kids. He hires people from Arundecoit, men and women, to come in, young men and women to come and work for him. My wife sat outside all summer last year because she's retired now, and it was a beautiful summer. We didn't get a lot of rain. She never once complained about trucks going by or anything like that. He cares about the community, as we all know, and he cares about the neighborhood, and to me, it's evident in everything that he does. So I support him 100%.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Patty Cook, 245 St. Joseph Street. I live across the street from Jeff. I'm going to try to be objective. It's hard to be objective because everyone feels quite similarly about Jeff and his altruistic nature and what an asset he is to our community. But when I think about the issue at hand and having this business, I tried very hard to think, well, what if it was a stranger? What if it was some business where I didn't know the business owner? So I'll tell you what I would think if that were the case. I've lived in the flats for 18 years and never been bothered by the business at all. It's across the street. The trucks do go by. I'm a runner. They're always very cautious when I run by those trucks. They slow down. They wave. They're friendly, the employees. All I can say is that the business hasn't impacted me negatively in any way. Knowing Jeff, though, and knowing those other things, I will speak to that just for a moment. There are kids in the community, there are retired people, there are people who have lost their jobs, and Jeff has employed them. He's gone out of his way to help people in our community, including people who we know personally, who have been in tight spots, and he's done everything he can to help them out. So for me, it would be a tragedy to lose a business like that from Arundecoit if he were to go elsewhere, because those people that have benefited from his business wouldn't be here. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Lori Whitmire. I live at 475 Sagamore Drive.
And I'm John.
And the other guy. And we have known Jeff since he was in high school, and we have used him as a business. And also, I was director of Sunset House for 22 years. And if it wasn't for Jeff and so many in the community, that house would not be here. Jeff, even before it opened, helped with all the landscaping. He planted trees, and for 22 years, he was behind us and under us for the whole time. And we couldn't have existed without him. He was there in every way, shape, or form. And I just and I also walk regularly, and I walk through the flats, and never have I had any trouble. So I just want to add to all the wonderful things about this young man.
And Jeff served on the board of Sunset House for several terms, number of terms.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jack Herma. I live at 152 Harvington Drive. I've known Jeff and his family for well over 20 years, and I can't speak any more to what you've heard tonight from the rest of the fans here.
if there's such thing as a testimonial, I'm presenting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Joe Riesenberger, 223 Harvington Drive. Yeah, I share the same last name as Jeff. 7 years ago, I retired after 45 years as a dental consultant. The next day, I became a landscaper. And one of the things Jeff said, you know, you've worked hard, but you're not going to pick up a shovel. You're not going to push a lawnmower. He says, just be around. And this is one of the things, I'm the company gopher. Working with the young kids, and Jeff's in the morning, he's on the phone, he's doing this and that. I'll work with the young guys, make sure they're picking up around the flats, or around the property, bottles, any pizza boxes, this and that. They'll help me, and I'll help them how to plant some of the plants we've brought in, water the trees in the flats. It's been a great experience for me, it's been something to do, and I've had people, the kids come back to me just saying they enjoy the work ethic down there, everything that's done. I've had parents come back and say, you know, Joe, you were a good part of their life, along with Jeff. I saw to it that the property was supposedly well-maintained 20 years ago when we first got the variance, and as long as I'm able to punch in, it's going to continue that way. We do take a lot of pride in it, and I take a lot of pride in him. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is C.P. Maloney, 17 Glen Cove Rise in Rochester. I've known the Riesenberg family since I was a child, actually. They all went to St. Margaret Mary's together with my brothers and sisters. And having known Joe and his brothers and then Jeff, and I've sailed with Jeff a number of times, this kid is a real outstanding representative of our town, of the town of Arundequoit. It's far and few between that we see a real kid who will pitch in at any time and say, I'll help out without even being asked. I don't care if it's the Sunset House or a neighbor who has a problem with their child. It doesn't matter. He has 2 children that are autistic, severely so. I know that he and his dad looked at a house on St. Paul Boulevard, and they were outbid on that house to try and help out the autistic kids. He's just always trying like crazy to help out the teenagers at Arundequoit High School as a ski instructor. He's done that for years, and you see him all over the town of Arundequoit helping our town. The flats are a very interesting and unique spot. I remember as a kid going down there, and it's a very, very, very sensitive area, if you will. But I do not feel that Jeff's business is impinging upon the sensitivity of that area. There's nothing that I can see as the town board, as this zoning board can do to stop this application. This man and his business are very, very well accepted by the town and should be granted this variance to continue on. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else to speak in favor? Is there anybody else to speak against this application?
Wade and Gina Weaver, 246 St. Joseph Street.
I think you received some information from us previously, and honestly, Jeff's character is certainly not in contention at this point. What we're really looking at is the variance that was approved and whether or not he's following what was approved in that variance. That's really what we're here to talk about. In regards to that, the property which is operated by Jeff located at 258 St. Joseph Street, in 2005, before purchasing our house at 246 St. Joseph Street, which is located directly next door to that, we obtained a copy of the variance which was allowed on the property. Over the past few years, what was explained by the applicant for these variances and how the property was going to look and be used seems to have been forgotten. In the beginning, Mr. Riesenberger was allowed to go beyond his variance now and then. We really had no problems with that. But over the last 2 years or so, he's expanded on that property quite a bit. After discussing the matter with with Jeff last spring, and throughout 2016, no resolution was reached. He stated that what he was doing was allowed in the variance, and there was no other conclusion. What he told the zoning board in 2000 and 2002, which was noted in the records, was that the bulk of his business would be located in the front third of his property, and he had no plans on increasing in that size. Despite that, the size has increased substantially. Both the growth and the increased activities were actually noted by Land Tech Survey and Planning, which represents Arundecoy Landscaping. There is an increased number of vehicles and equipment in the front third, and an increase in the overall size and amount of materials and debris stored on the property. The variance allowed for 4 pickup trucks, 1 dump truck, and 1 stake body truck. That now has increased to 5 pickup trucks, 4 dump trucks, 1 stake body, and 2 dirt screeners and several trailers on the property. Originally asked for a variance to store topsoil on the property, there are now 2 dirt screeners that are on the property that screen the excavated dirt. That dirt is trucked in on 10-wheelers from other companies' sites and are dropped off. This, along with bobcat operations, backup alarms, and other equipment running on and off during the day and early evening, creates a great deal of noise. Also, work is being done on Saturdays and Sundays. When we first moved in, there was materials that were stored on the property in smaller piles. Now the bulk of the materials and the debris is stored throughout the property. I think you've also received some pictures that should have shown some of that. If not, we have those with us. Supposedly, Mr. Riesenberger presented a proposal that Terry Tree Service was going to clean up the wood, brush, and debris, existing chips, and so forth from the site, but that has not happened. Other contractors are required to dispose of debris at designated locations, such as a landfill or recycling. This debris continues to pile up. That's things such as concrete, brush, building materials, pallets, leaves, and grass piles. In the past years, these materials were put out to the roadside for the town to pick up, but that's no longer the case. Another example of the items being stored on the property includes wood chips that are dropped off from other contractors and is not triple ground nursery grade mulch as stated. Due to the increased workload, as you've already heard, Mr. Riesenberger also hired a part-time mechanic. His responsibilities include repair, upkeep, and testing of the equipment. This is also added to the increased noise level because that repair work is now done on site rather than moved off site. Living directly next door to this property, we are exposed to the sights and sounds of this on a daily basis. It should be noted, however, that Mr. Riesenberger moved off the property shortly after receiving his variance in 2000. Mr. Riesenberger also stated in the variance that there were 6 to 8 foot high weeds at the edge of the property, those weeds are actually on our property, on our back half, and they are seasonal and die off. They do not create a permanent barrier and should not have even been considered as a factor. The bulk of the operations are supposed to be happening in the front third. Only materials are supposed to be located in the back of the property near the evergreens. Over time, parts of our property have actually been excavated away and debris dumped in its place in the form of grass, leaves, wood, and dirt materials. Even more, the same is happening on neighboring property behind 258 St. Joseph Street, which is owned by the Bidex. Even if the Bidex had allowed for this, it is not permitted as per current zoning or variance regulations. When we discussed the matter with Mr. Riesenberger, he asked to see the property line. Consequently, we had to have our property resurveyed at a cost to us, since the original survey markers had actually been excavated away. To date, all the debris still has not been removed from the property or restored to its original setting. With the increased noise and unsightly sounds, it's no longer very enjoyable or relaxing atmosphere to sit in our yard and in our house. It has a negative impact on how we use our property. Our property is a little bit different in the fact that we don't sit facing directly the street. Our property actually faces directly the neighboring property. My front door, I walk out, and that is the 258 address. We don't want to lose the enjoyment of our home that we've had over the years. And after discussing the matter with two realtors, they've estimated that we could stand to lose in the area of 10% of the value of our property. Based on the current assessment, that would be approximately $20,000 and is not acceptable. They also stated that other properties in the neighborhood could also be affected, but to a lesser degree as the property decreased, as the distance increased. We understand that this is an outdoor business, and we did not have any issues with the way the variance was stated originally. The lots are bigger with our property and the neighbor property, the only ones that are adjacent to it. However, we are still zoned as residential, and we're asking that Mr. Riesenberger follow what was presented to the zoning board when he originally filed for his variances.
In addition to that, some of the violations to the variance which are occurring is the variance only allowed for one dump truck, one stake body, and 4 pickup trucks. Now there are currently 3 additional dump trucks and a pickup truck stored on the property outside of what was allowed. The site plan submitted and approved on 1/15/2001 specified all landscape materials which be stored in the rear of the property behind the evergreen tree screening. Piles of landscape materials are currently being located throughout the property. The maximum size of the material stated in the variance is to be no more than 10 feet wide, 20 feet long, 10 feet high. The size of the piles of the landscape materials currently on the property exceed this variance decision. There is a nursery located in the front part of the property which was not mentioned in any of the past variances. There are dirt screeners on machines in operation on a property for screening excavated dirt that are not allowed or even mentioned in past variances. There are trailers throughout the property along with leaf boxes for use in the dump trucks which should be stored in the garage with the lawn equipment as stated with the exception of the allowable vehicles approved to be outdoors. And I don't know if you've seen a copy of their site plan there that was approved back then, but this is the site plan. And in response to the letter that was submitted, there was, like I said, there was no mention in past variance that allowed for a stockyard for plants or nursery for growing plants. All lawn maintenance equipment was to be stored inside the buildings. The operation of a soil screener on the property was never approved or even mentioned in the variances, and the work is done on and off throughout the day, not just between the hours of 7:30 and 9 and 5 to 6 in the evening, as stated. We do agree that the flats is working man and women's domain, but you can say that about all the areas in Arundecoit. The contractors mentioned in the area have a pickup truck, maybe a trailer located at their home. They either work indoors or have material delivered to or are picked up on their way to their job site. Materials are not stockpiled throughout their property with equipment running on and off during the day. They also live on site. As for the fence that was mentioned, we didn't ask for it to be installed. When we talked to Mr. Riesenberg, we told him not to waste his money on the fence. Just follow the variance and site plan that was approved by the zoning board.
Do you have a copy of the
Yeah.
site
I
plan?
did give it to Carrie, like in October. But if they want to make a copy of this, that's fine.
Or can I just see it, if you could pass it to the, Mr. Evans?
Do we have copies of the prior variances, the actual physical copies? So
Carrie's going to
she's
look.
getting
Oh, the
them.
site plan?
And there were actual plans, maps that were submitted and approved in connection with that?
And I don't know if you got the pictures of what it looked like over there. I gave them to
We've
Carrie
got the
also.
different years, yes. How long have you guys lived next door?
2005, 12 years, a little over. There is no problem. I mean, we just wanted the variance to be followed, we don't have an issue with it, or, with what he's operating there, just have the variance followed.
Now, this fence was put up along your side of the lot, I take it?
Right on yes, south side, yes, along his lot line.
And does your lot go as far back as his does?
Yes.
Yes, it does. That's why in the site plan, it shows it, that all the stuff is to be, it shows you everything's stored behind the evergreen screening trees in the back, so as not to take away from the ambience down there.
Right.
And if you see the site plan, you'll see where there's nothing in between
I have a question about this picture.
Okay.
I'm seeing what I perceive as Jeff's operation in this part of the.
Correct,
picture.
yes.
Now, is this your house
Yes,
down here?
right there, yes, correct.
Oh, okay. I'm not seeing a fence at this point. This
Right,
says
that's an older one. That's, I don't know, I'm not sure what year that picture was taken.
2011.
Okay,
Yeah, the
yep.
fence was just
Just
put
put
up
up just
this year.
recently.
Okay. Well, is that fence like where these trees are on the other side of the driveway?
Right, yes, right there, yes.
Yeah.
South of the trees, yeah.
Okay.
But I don't know, Carrie had the pictures that we, turned into, we're in October there, so I don't know what,
These are the 2016, 2014, or 15, those were your pictures?
yes.
Okay.
Like I said, we had no problem with, what's going on down there, just want the variance to be followed, that's all, that initially stated.
Whose job at the town would it be to make sure that a variance is complied with?
Code enforcement. Right. So I think that, and there may be a little bit of confusion as to, what's actually permitted at the property. And John, maybe if you want to come back up and speak to that. But I think there have been several approvals since the initial variance that may have dealt with some of the issues in particular.
Not that we saw in the pile, in their
Okay.
file, the last one was in 2001, I believe.
Okay.
And everything after that has been just however you want to do it.
Okay.
But there is stipulations on how big the piles were supposed to be and to be located and that were up there. In 2001 was the last time that it was actually updated there.
Okay.
Unless there was missing stuff out of the file for that, but that shouldn't be the case.
Sure. And so this board understands as well, keep in mind that a use variance is a little bit different than an area variance or a site plan approval that relate to particular structures. A use variance grants the ability for a property to be utilized in a certain way or for a certain use, and that can involve some changes and transformations, but those, to your point, do have to be in compliance with whatever conditions
Right, yeah,
were
were there.
placed on the approval.
Yes.
So
Correct.
I don't think, and it's not my understanding that the applicant is looking, and they can let us know if this isn't the case, for any updates to the conditions of the approval. So if this board was, willing to grant the request that's being asked for, which is the extension indefinitely of the existing use variance, it would continue per the existing terms and conditions that were previously approved, unless the applicant lets us know that they're looking for relief from any of the conditions aside from the sunset provision. So, and then if there are issues with the way that the property is being utilized and it is found by the code enforcement office to be in violation of the existing area and use variance approvals, then they would pursue through that office an enforcement proceeding. Does that make sense?
Right, yeah, we're just, I'm just asking to have the variance filed down there. I'm not asking
Understood.
for him to shut down his business and move. No, not at all.
I'm hoping Harry's coming. I mean, if we're being asked to extend a variance with conditions, I think it might sound crazy. I don't think I've seen the variance with conditions to extend.
Right.
So I would, I think the board needs to see what we're actually agreeing to extend.
Well, like I said, there's no
Just being a
problem with
technical lawyer, I guess.
a permanent one or whatever. It's just that what the variance says, it should be followed.
Sure. Okay.
And we are a little in the dark as far as not have been able to read the original variance. It isn't in our packet. So, hopefully.
I was upstairs pulling the files, so I have, I'd be happy to run upstairs and make copies so that everybody can take a look at the previous approvals for use variance both, and then there are some additional area variances as well.
I think, in order to make a decision, we need to at least be able to read through it. Now,
Absolutely.
whether we can do that on our break or, before deliberation, or if it's not
And I apologize to the board for not having provided that in the packets.
Okay. All right, thank you for bringing it to the attention.
Okay.
And we'll take a
Okay,
look.
thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else that would like to speak against the variance? Seeing none, I guess it's your turn again, John.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. And as we all heard from the public, that Jeff is a great neighbor and a great businessman and sensitive to their concerns. But I think that council brought up the fact that there are, originally back in 1997, there was the use variance that granted that allowed Jeff to operate his business. And if we all had a crystal ball to see how that would go, Jeff did the best he could, saying, I want to operate my business down here. That had a term of 5 years. He came back in that 5-year term and updated his use variance. Subsequent to that, he's also been to this board 2 or 3 times for area variances. So that's where the confusion is. So it's the business use that we're talking about tonight. And Carrie can correct me if I'm wrong, there are no violations on record for Jeff's operation of a variance.
Just a quick question. How many acres is the parcel?
5 acres.
Okay. This document speaks of a 1.6 acre parcel. Was it always one 5-acre parcel, or were they combined at any point? 1 5-acre? All right, thanks.
So as the need progressed, town made Jeff aware that you need to get a variance. If it would be for a truck or bulk storage, he did that and came to this town and got those variances. And I think if you look through the stuff that you have, we're hoping you can vote tonight, but if you look through that, you'll see that there isn't anything related to time limits or 1/3 of the front yard or anything like that, where he's limited in that. He's allowed in the use variance to operate his business there. There are some contingencies that you'll read that Jeff has followed and has never been flagged negatively. Comments have been made for some mulching off-site. Typical, it's a big area down there. The Bidex do own the property, and if there is some mulch out there, it's not surveyed, but they gave Mr. Riesenberger a waiver for that I'd like to give to the board.
Those are the people who live behind them.
Correct. Yep. So there are some wooded areas back there where mulch is stored, but, the property is used holistically.
Who gave him a waiver for that?
The Bidex family that owned.
They're allowing him to extend the variance under
They're
their
not
private
allowing him to
property?
extend the variance. We're not aware that if there's mulch over the property line or not. They don't care if it is. The property line along that area is kind of vague, so it has not been surveyed by Jeff to understand where that limit is. But if there is some intrusion on their property, they don't have a problem with it. And Jeff has actually taken steps to either get a lease to use that if that's an issue. But again, that goes back to Jeff and his integrity as a business owner to keep trying to.
That would be a whole new
Excuse
variance.
That would be.
Do you have the date that this was signed?
That's the copy I just received tonight. I believe it was
Just
signed.
undated copy.
Yep, I don't have that with me. It might have got cut off on the copier. I could provide that to the town.
No, it didn't cut off.
Oh, I don't know.
Date's usually under the heading. Could you provide us the date?
Sure. I could have that updated. I just received that tonight. But, so again, we're talking about not limiting Jeff's business beyond, or expanding his business beyond the original use variance or the updated use variance in 2002. We can go through that point by point if you wish, or you want to do that during your break.
Well, again, none of this board has seen the original use variance, and
Yeah,
it's probably our own fault, but, obviously understanding the outpouring of people that enjoy Jeff and his business, the neighbor does have a concern, in reference to is he following the original variance, and we don't know because we've never read it.
Yeah, no, I understand. That's.
So for us to say, at this point, we're gonna extend it in perpetuity, it's, we don't know what we're extending.
I fully understand, Mr. Chairman, but as you know, time is money. We're hoping to resolve this matter tonight.
I understand it 100%.
So-
And I also understand the concerns of all the rest of the people that, in support and him. I mean, I know he's got a nice business, but I do, we have to be a little sensitive to the next door
no, I
neighbor.
fully understand.
A lot sensitive to the next door neighbor.
Yeah.
And John, we'll take a look at the approvals, but is there anything from your perspective, because you have reviewed them, that you want to point out or that we should be aware of that's potentially problematic, or do you think that everything appears to be in order, just so there are no surprises?
Well, when I look at problematic, I think of what the neighbors their issues are. It's been noise. What I heard from them, I know that Jeff has made opportunities to any equipment he has to buy less obtrusive sounding equipment. Air hammers and things like that have been changed out. His hours of operation have not been flagged by the town, so he does work within those parameters. So he tries to be.
Were there original hours of operation that was allowed?
I have to go through the.
No. So you gotta look at the original too.
Yeah, I know. We all have to look at the original. But I believe it's per town standard, which for normal working hours, I think it's like 8 to 9. I think they're pretty lax as far as that. There's a lot of room there, but
Okay.
Jeff operates within that.
I think what we should do is get a look at the, if Carrie's making some copies, if we can get a look at it during their break, then we can either make a determination or, table it to the next meeting, but we'll make that determination once we can read it.
Yep.
And it's helpful to know from you that you're not tonight seeking relief of any of the conditions of the current approvals. Is that correct? It's just the
We're not looking for any
renewal.
relief. If there's any, unless Jeff, you want to break in, as operated, there's trucks stored outside, there's bulk storage outside, there's operations of the business itself that holistically involve the business, and any change to that would have a negative impact on Mr. Riesenberger.
Okay.
So we don't want to change anything. If there's anything if there's something that comes up per the review, we'd probably come back for an area variance, but I don't see any changes to the use.
Okay.
And again, we haven't been cited by anybody at town level, and as long as the town doesn't cite Mr. Riesenberger while we're waiting next month for anything, if we have to wait that long, I guess we're fine with that.
Well, at this point, let us at least get a look at it and see.
I may be able to add a couple things to this. Part of what you're looking at is a compilation of what has gone on over 20 years. And when I first moved into the flats, there were some archaic town zoning laws on the books. For instance, I was first cited for having a gravel driveway. And after coming to the zoning board, they said, you're grandfathered in, you had that. And then there was a code about not having a vehicle over a quarter-ton truck. And I said, well, most people now drive half-ton trucks, Suburbans, those kind of things. So that got addressed. But in the original, back in 1999 or 2000, when I got the original use variance, at that time they said, what do you have? And that's what I had then. What I have now is a few more vehicles. And my neighbor addressed something about 2 soil screeners. I had an original soil screener because we recycle. We're a full circle recycling operation. We take the old stuff, recycle it, and sell it. We reuse it. And the old original soil screener was a gas model, and it was loud and it shook. That machine is sold. It is gone from the property. There's now a diesel machine which is quieter, and you don't hear it as much. There's only one on the property. Our trucks are all shielded by trees and tucked into specially made parking areas, so they're not visible to any of my neighbors. And the piles of mulch I get are the same as the piles I got back then. I don't know the exact dimensions, but when I order bulk mulch, it comes in a 60 to 80 cubic yard load. That's what I get, and I have 3 different colors down there. Since the time that my neighbor addressed some concerns, I've made modifications, including the fence. We put in quiet air compressors in the barn so we didn't hear that in the morning. The guys come in a little bit later. There is material on the back third of the property, but I don't know why that should be micromanaged by my neighbor. The front part of the parcel, the first half of it, is completely landscaped. Nobody even knows there's a landscape business there. And we want to be good neighbors, especially to the Weavers, because they're immediately next to us. And as they addressed, unlike anybody else on that street, they're set back and their juxtaposition faces the rear of my property that nobody else does. And obviously, the rear of your property is usually the least maintained. And we've made other modifications, including moving an entire row of compost that was along his property and moved it to the far left of the property, away from him. We've also reduced the size of the topsoil pile. And as soon as the topsoil pile that's there now is gone, we are moving our screener behind an area of wooded trees. So we've addressed everything we possibly could, trying to be good neighbors. And all of you that know me know that's the truth. And I'm sorry that they have some objections, and I've asked them to make a list of things so my father and I can go through them, but they've refused to give me a printed list so I can address each and every one of them. So we're trying to be good neighbors. Nothing has changed as far as the quantities of the soil and the mulch we get in there. And again, we're trying to adjust to anything. And when I talked to him about this before, when he addressed the concern about fitting the application, I said, you're not talking about legal issues, you're talking about neighborly issues. And I said to him face to face, and he'll admit this, that I don't want to go to court with you or the zoning board and perhaps get approved and then have you still be disappointed because these are neighborly issues. And regardless of how this is decided upon tonight, I'll continue to work with my neighbor. If he has problems, I'd be glad to address them.
Mr. Riesenberger, how many trucks total do you have now? Just roughly.
Approximately 10 or 11.
Okay. Are they parked inside, outside?
Most of them are parked outside, but like I said, we've put in asphalt, we put in paver parking areas, and they're all screened by mature trees, and they're all lined up nice and neat. Part of the reason where the materials are stored on the rear of the property is they're not as far back as I would like to do. As you all know right now, things are very wet. We even put down 60 cubic yards of stone and a pathway to get to the back of the field to get the mulch back as far as we can. And when things dry out, it'll go even further. I'm aware of my neighbor's concerns, and I care about them. I'm not trying to brush them off. And I think he would admit that we've done a lot of changes this spring already trying to appease him. And it's not personal. We're trying to be good neighbors.
Any questions?
That letter from the, was it Bidex?
Yes.
When was that? There's no date on it. When was that?
I believe it was last week it came in.
Oh, okay. All right. So it's very recent then.
They could be contacted to verify it.
That's all right.
And what he's referring to is my neighbor had his property surveyed, and it turns out that this pile of refuse debris encroaches upon it. And my neighbor went to our neighbors and discussed it with them, and they discussed it with me. And they said, Jeff, we've known you all of our life. We have no problem with it. She said, since the day we bought it, I probably haven't even walked back there. And she said, I'll give you a release, and if you want, I had offered to buy the property. She said her attorney recommended against selling a small parcel of their property off of their 12 or 15 acre lot, but the attorney said if you wanted to lease it or to do an exchange for services, that would be okay, but they didn't want to sell it. And I offered to buy it so that there would be no problem with it. But, and the ultimate thing I said to them is if this bothers you that some of our refuse is being encroaching on your property, I will move it. And she said, we'll work it out. That's what's done in the flats. We work it out. And there's one final thing. My neighbor had his property resurveyed, and he said that, there's still some of my debris on his property. Well, the person before him had his property filled approximately 3 feet with garbage and debris, asphalt, concrete, and those kind of things to raise his property. And now that we know where it is, I moved all of my stuff off of there. But I'm not going to re-landscape his property. We did plant 10 more small trees along there, and we put in 10 8 to 10 foot trees behind the fence too. So we put in a vinyl fence as a visual buffer, so if he's sitting in his house, looking out his front door, sitting on his front porch, he sees a vinyl fence, which is the most expensive kind of fence. I purchased a color fence that matched his house and my property. It's tan. So between all of these things that we've done, moving the existing piles of compost, the quieter air compressor, making modifications to where the piles are stored, and still working on it, still work in progress, I want to make it good for him. And I have another neighbor to the left of me, and he doesn't have any concerns with the issue right now. He's not here tonight in defiance of it. So, we've been there a long time. We've been trying to evolve with the property, and we're trying to be good neighbors to the Weavers.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you. Okay, I think we'll close that, and we'll take a 10-minute break to, actually, let's make it,
Are these other applications continuing being tabled?
of course. Yes.
Yeah, the the agenda was updated for the items that are tabled.
Okay.
The agendas were updated to reflect that applications were requested to be postponed until next month's meeting, the June meeting.
Okay, great.
All right, we'll take a break till 20 minutes of, so about 10, 12 minutes. Okay? Give me a chance to read this. Couple people just stepped out, so let's give them a second to get back in here. We're going to start the meeting back up, gentlemen. If you're out in the hallway.
Andre just went to get some water.
Okay. And we're missing Mr. Thomas, too.
Somebody might be in the restroom.
Road there? Okay, and then 63 Dakeland, they left. Glen Clove, 6 Glen Cove Rise, they left. And then we have St. Joseph. So let's start with Eastridge Road. On the signage for Rochester Regional Health, do I hear a motion? This is a type 2 action for seeker. Right?
Correct.
And do I use pen on this? Right.
Might as well.
Do I hear a motion from any of the board members?
Yes, I'll make a motion that we approve this request for the 2 signs on Portland and Ridge. The following findings. First of all, it's right in the middle of a commercial area, so these signs aren't going to change the character of the neighborhood. There are no alternatives to this request. Well, they could go smaller, I suppose, but they need the 2 signs because they have 2 separate entrances that are quite different. It's not a huge request, and it should not have any physical or environmental effect on the area. And it's not really self-created because they need to identify what they're doing and what's in there.
I'll
So
second.
on that basis, I think we need to give our stamp of approval to this request.
I'll second.
Okay. Mr. Thomas, Mr. Polino, seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We have 1 absent. Six, 4, 6, and 1 absent. Oh, that's right, I'm sorry. Apologize, I do have you there, okay. Motion carries. Right. Okay. And then we're gonna jump from Eastridge Road, we're gonna jump to 258 St. Joseph's. So during the break, we had a chance to read over the initial use variance. And the initial use variance was granted way back in '97, and then it came back to the board a couple of times, and it was continued for the operation of a landscaping business. So that is what he's here for tonight, is a use variance, not an area variance for extra equipment or anything else like that. We spoke about the fact that whether an area variance on a business that was granted a use variance even was necessary. And we have, based on council, you want to speak on it, or
Yeah.
Carrie to speak on it?
I can, just briefly, we looked over the prior approvals, and although, we're not here tonight discussing any of the area variances, as I mentioned briefly during the public hearing portion, when a use variance is granted to operate a certain business that within it includes the ancillary rights, for reasonable uses that would be made in connection with that primary use. So if you are operating, for example, a landscape business, you would assume that there would be a certain amount of storage of landscaping materials and vehicles and all of the related types of operations. So whether or not the area variances that have been previously granted in connection with the property were necessary is not something that we need to evaluate or talk about here tonight. That can be taken up separately with the code office at some future date if desirable by the applicant or anyone else for that matter in the community. But tonight, as Mr. LaPerry said, we are looking at the use variance, most recently reissued in 2002 for the operation, this is a quote, the operation of a landscape business at the property.
That being said, I want, the applicant, along with his neighbor, to know that we're sensitive to the fact that they have some concerns. So I would hope, and based on all the positive feedback that we have about Mr. Reisenberg, that he can work with his neighbors and try to keep good neighborly things. Again, we are here tonight to look at the use variance only. And I do understand your concerns. So that being said, we need a motion. This is an unlisted action for seeker. We need a motion, and I'll make the motion, I guess, for the environmental assessment form. And I'm not going to read down the whole thing, but there were no small impact based on the environment assessment form. So based on that, I'm going to make a motion to approve the seeker form, impact assessment form. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
And adopt a negative declaration, just so we're all clear.
Okay, for the right terms, adopt a negative declaration. And who seconded that?
I did.
Mr. Upson. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And there's one absent. Let me see, there was 7 of us. Okay, motion carried. Okay, would anybody like to make a motion on the variance?
Could I ask council just a question first?
Yes.
Just to clarify, I was just reading part of the statement from the use variance. It's where the town zoning board approved the use variance and referenced a number of findings there. But if we're going to agree to the same use variance and we're just going to continue it, it would include those same findings. That's all I wanted clarification on.
Correct.
And it's the October 30th, 2002 notice of decision for the use variance.
Respectfully, I think the one thing from that original decision that probably couldn't be carried forward, or is the one provision referencing, I think and I'm sorry, that
Sure, we're no longer going to have I think the idea is that the board is going to grant it without the conditions on the ownership and the duration, which are questionable. But as far as the way that the
Yep.
use is, I think that's your point, right, Mr.
Yes,
Polino?
yes, ownership meaning it does not end with this owner.
Correct.
And period of time, yes,
Correct.
absolutely.
But the manner in which the business was approved
The
to be
findings that
operated.
applied before apply now.
thank you.
So we don't have to go over the findings again?
No,
Okay. So do I hear a motion?
but I would just make it clear that the motion is to grant a use variance in perpetuity with no qualifications as to ownership, but otherwise on the terms and conditions as the prior use variance for the operation of a landscape business at the property.
Okay, that being said, I don't have to say it. I'll make a motion that we grant the use variance based on the last time it came was in 2002 to the zoning board to operate a landscaping business in said premises in perpetuity. So no longer based on a 5 or 10 year period. We're just going to give it, and also it goes with the land.
Correct.
It does not necessarily go with the owner. So it goes with the land. That's the way a use variance does work. Based on all the criteria for a use variance, based on the last few times this variance has been granted, we're going to stay with those criteria.
Second.
Second.
And just one point for discussion, just because there was a good exchange with someone who was not with the next door neighbor. If there are questions as to whether or not the applicant is abiding by the use, for instance, if the applicant were to use a jackhammer at midnight every night to demolish vehicles, that would be beyond the use. That is an issue to be addressed with the code enforcement officer. So if there are any belief that they're going beyond what was contemplated or what is part of the proper use, that's something to deal with the code enforcement officer on. And that's, so there is a remedy if the neighbor believes that there's something that should be happening there that is not appropriate. That's something that can be handled through the code enforcement officer. So there is a proper channel to handle that. But in terms of whether or not they can use it for landscaping purposes, I mean, it seems to me pretty clear that they were granted the ability to use it for a landscaping business, and the only question is if they can continue to do that. The contours are something that the town can address and the code enforcement office can address.
I think that's right.
Motion made by me and seconded by Mr. Thomas. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So motion carries. 7 and 1 absent, or not absent because we got,
Right.
right, okay. All right, motion carries. Right?
Yep, you're all set.
Granted, okay, thank you. Thank you. All right, next one is, they've gone home, is Dakeland. Do I hear a motion on Dakeland?
Type 2.
This is a type 2 action. Hear no motion?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, I was hoping you'd help me out.
I make a motion that we approve the request for the variance on Dakeland with regard to the fence, with the following findings. Certainly, there's not going to be a large or any significant change to the character of the neighborhood. There is no alternative to this because the piece of property is quite small, and they only have very limited flat space around the front of the house. It's not a very substantial request because it's just basically from the front door to the garage, so that the dog can have some room outside. And it's not substantial enough to even have an effect on the physical or environmental conditions of the property. Is it self-created? It could be argued that it is because you don't have to have a dog. However, not serious enough to cause this motion to go down. So that's my motion.
I'll second.
I'd like to add a condition, only because based on the one letter that we've got in reference to the style of the fence.
Oh, yes.
Would that be all right if I add that condition?
Absolutely.
The folks, the applicants, said they were going to use a Gothic picket fence, or something very close to, but the condition is to use
Gothic or similar.
A picket style fence.
Picket style fence.
picket.
I'm sorry, that's per code anyway.
Well, the concern,
Front yard fencing is supposed to be open or picket
well,
or the like.
it could be a chain link.
Iron, decorative
No.
wrought
No,
iron.
No, illegal.
Okay,
Illegal.
well,
Not permitted.
not permitted.
Illegal.
All right,
It has, front yard fencing is very distinct. It's supposed to be open or picket.
okay,
Or split rail.
Or split rail, there you go, that's the one.
okay.
They
So you don't believe it's necessary to make that? I mean, they did say they were gonna use that one, they circled it on the form. So I'll put picket style fence or open style fence.
That's
Per-
But no split rail. Greyhound could get through
I was
it.
gonna say that won't be good for the Greyhound.
Turn into an obstacle course.
Oh,
Kill
yeah,
us
where they
center.
do the jumps.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Was it seconded?
Yes, Mr. Polino seconded it.
We did.
Yes, he was right
Very
there.
good at.
Motion carries 7 and 1
It's quick to second all your motions, Russ.
Okay, so that one's good, right?
Yes.
Okay. And then the last one is Glen Cove Rise. Do I hear a motion on that one?
The type 2 action, I'll make a motion, Mr. Chairman, that we grant the variance as applied for to allow a decreased rear setback so they can build their fence. I'd like to make that motion based on the following findings. It will not change the character of the neighborhood. Everyone else has a fence. And the homeowners association has approved this particular, not fence, deck. What the deck? So it's not going to change the neighborhood. There are no alternate solutions because they need a deck and the lot is just a small size. It is not substantial. It will have no adverse effect on the physical environment because this is not a deck that's running directly across the ground. This is something that looks like from the drawings, it's 48 inches off the ground, which means the runoff is not going to prevent the water from permeating through the soil and running down into the neighbor's basement, which would be a mess. So I don't think it'll have an environmental impact, and it's not self-created again. That's the way all the lots are.
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 7 to 7. Very good. And that is, okay. All right. I think that concludes our business for the evening, right?
We're adjourned.
Okay, we're adjourned.
Minutes.